Chapter 380 Wake up, sister. Ma Xiaodao grunted softly as the hand that was tightly latched onto Huo Yuao's shoulder relaxed a little more. Ma Xiaodao's ultimate fire and Huo Yuao's ultimate collided once more, and both their bodies were jolted painfully, as if they were being electrocuted. Huo Yuao couldn't raise his left arm anymore, as his shoulder was severely injured, and his tendons and blood vessels were damaged. But that wasn't important to him. What was important was that he had finally taken the most crucial step. Sister, wake up, wake up. I am Huo Yuao, and you are Ma Xiaodao. We are both students from Shrek Academy, and you are my sister, sister. He called out to Ma Xiaodao again and again, and he applied strength continuously through his arm that was wrapped around her waist. The Ice Jade Emperor Scorpion's patterns gradually glimmered into view on Huo Yuao's back as he began to strengthen his ultimate ice. Intense chills emerged from his body and transformed into countless thin threads that fought against Ma Xiaodao's ultimate fire. But amidst this contest of extremes, a grey soul ring glimmered beneath Huo Yuao's feet and discreetly absorbed the energies of darkness within Ma Xiaodao's ultimate fire. Huo Yuao was no longer the weak and small soul master that had participated in the Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy Soul Dueling Tournament with Ma Xiaodao back then. His soul power had reached rank 60, and he just needed another soul ring before he would become a soul emperor. He might possibly reach an even higher level. Huo Yuao had completely absorbed the origin energy of ultimate ice that the Snow Empress had infused into his body a long time ago, and his soul power was so pure that even Shu Sanqi, who was nearing rank 70, would gasp in amazement. How was Huo Yuao able to defeat and kill that spiritual type evil soul master, an 8-ring soul Douluo? Besides the power of his 3 ultimate skills, his personal cultivation formed an important foundation for this feat. The truth was that Huo Yuao could almost obtain 2 soul rings instead of just 1. The foundations of his soul power were nearing rank 70 because of the gift that the Snow Empress had given him a long time ago, formidable soul power, which had brought him incredible pain and agony. This soul power had always been there, and as the hard times ended, the good times began. This also meant that Huo Yuao had a chance to directly become a soul sage if he could find suitable soul rings, and was the same reason why he had the stamina to resist Ma Xiaodao. He was only rank 60, but his endurance and the strength of his soul power were close to rank 70, while his element wasn't any weaker than hers. Huo Yuao would be considered a powerful individual in the world of soul masters today. Or rather, a quasi-powerful individual. He already had the confidence to resist his sister face to face, while his strong control over his spiritual power was also part of his foundation and confidence. At this moment, he was using ultimate ice to support his spiritual power in an attempt to awaken Ma Xiaodao, and he was also weakening the energies of darkness inside her body. The most empirical difference between Ma Xiaodao and Tanya was that the evil soul masters had directly controlled Tanya's heart and mind. In addition to the drugs and whatnot that those evil soul masters had given her, Tanya was almost completely lost and confused. In contrast, one of Ma Xiaodao's most substantial problems was presented by her martial soul, the evil phoenix. All sorts of hallucinogens or psychedelics were futile against someone who possessed ultimate fire like she did. Those evil soul masters were able to control her heart and mind, but they were only able to do so because they took advantage of her confusion and her emotional characteristics. Huo Yuao continuously weakened the energies of darkness within her body so that her confused will and consciousness could gradually recover. Even if Ma Xiaodao couldn't awaken completely, she would at least be able to retrieve part of her memory. What Huo Yuao had inherited from the Calamity Necromancer Electrolux allowed him to discreetly purify the evil aura's fundamental existence within Ma Xiaodao's body. If Huo Yuao was as powerful back then as he was today, he wouldn't have been afraid of Ma Xiaodao going mad at all. Ma Xiaodao's right hand finally relaxed completely. Her right hand was still on his shoulder, but her confused and befuddled eyes gradually became clear and transparent, while those dancing flames in her eyes were slowly receding. Sister. Huo Yuao continued to call out to her, and every single call came from deep within his heart. Every single exclamation was filled with his intimacy with Ma Xiaodao. You are. Ma Xiaodao's voice didn't sound so hoarse, as the ultimate fire on her body ebbed. Huo Yuao slowly withdrew his ultimate ice at the same time. Yes, I am your Huo Yuao. I am your little brother. Wake up, sister, wake up. I am Ma Xiaodao. I'm not the holy lady. I'm not the holy lady. Ma Xiaodao's eyes were becoming increasingly clear, and Huo Yuao continued to dispel the energies of darkness within her body as her eyes became brighter and brighter. The dark red flames that were emanating from her body slowly became fiery red. We have a chance. Huo Yuao was elated as he enhanced his absorption of Ma Xiaodao's darkness. He patted Ma Xiaodao softly on her back again and again as he continued to guide her with his spiritual power. I am Ma Xiaodao. What am I doing here? Ma Xiaodao muttered as if she was in a daze. Huo Yuao gently released her from his embrace. He raised his head and stared into her eyes. Dark red colors in Ma Xiaodao's eyes had evaded. Even though her eyes couldn't be considered impeccably clear and transparent, she didn't have that coldness from before. You're Yuao. How have you become so tall? Ma Xiaodao stared at him with a dazed look in her eyes. Huo Yuao answered, that's because I've grown up. Sister, I am Yuao. Ma Xiaodao suddenly saw his shoulder and asked, what happened to your shoulder? Who was the one that hurt you so much? I'll kill him. Her eyes instantly became sharp as she spoke. Calm down, sister, calm down. I did that to myself by accident, and I'm alright. You need to calm down. Huo Yuao urgently tried to explain. He couldn't let Ma Xiaodao descend into her original state of confusion because of any emotions that were rippling in her heart. What's happening to me, Yuao? Why do I feel so muddle-headed? I feel like I've been this way for a long time. I've finally seen you after so long. How have you been? Huo Yuao said gently. I've been well, sister. Life has been tough on you these days. Ever since you lost control of your martial soul during the big competition, we took you back to the academy for treatment, but the whole master of the illustrious Virtue Hall, Jingheng Chen, entered the academy and destroyed your treatment room. The Holy Ghost Church, which consists entirely of evil soul masters, took that opportunity to kidnap you before they turned you into another person with their evil sorceries. Can you remember anything? Ma Xiaodao quivered when she heard the Holy Ghost Church, and seemed to regain her memory slowly. The Holy Ghost Church. I am the Holy Ghost Church's holy lady. No, why have I become the Holy Ghost Church's holy lady? No, I am Ma Xiaodao. I am Ma Xiaodao. Her eyes were starting to become confused and bewildered once more. Huo Yuao lifted his right hand and pressed it against her forehead as he channeled threads of cool soul power into her. Ma Xiaodao shivered from the cold, and her eyes became clear again. Where are we, Yuao? I seem to have forgotten many things, but my brain seems to contain many things too. What do we do? What should I do? She displayed some weakness as she spoke, and she took a step forward and hugged Huo Yuao again. Her delicate body was still trembling faintly. Huo Yuao gently patted her back and said, it's all right, sister. What happened in the past has already happened, and as long as you recover, you'll still be Ma Xiaodao, and you'll still be my sister. Sister, you should try to clear your head, and you should try your best to think back. Ma Xiaodao seemed to gain quite some comfort in Huo Yuao's embrace, and her emotions finally slowly settled down. I think I can remember. I can remember some things. Have I done many bad things, Yuao? Ma Xiaodao's voice sounded a little grief-stricken. No, sister, you have never done anything bad or wrong. The Holy Ghost Church's holy lady is the one who has done those things, and not you. Furthermore, I have never seen you harm anyone. You need to relax. We are in grave danger at the moment, and you have to calm down as quickly as possible. All right. The necromantic halo beneath Huo Yuao's feet had absorbed much of the darkness within Ma Xiaodao's body. Ma Xiaodao could finally control her own emotions with her willpower, and memories flooded into her brain like a tsunami. I've killed people, Yuao. I've killed many people, innocent people, and soul masters. I have. Huo Yuao swiftly interrupted her and said, don't say that, sister. I already said, the Holy Ghost Church's holy lady did all that, not you. Do you understand? You didn't do all those things. Ma Xiaodao was momentarily stunned. Not me. I didn't do those things. That is correct. You weren't the one. Those people died at the Holy Ghost Church's hands. Those were the words that came out of Huo Yuao's mouth, but he couldn't help but shut his eyes from all the pain that he felt. He could tell from Ma Xiaodao's status within the Holy Ghost Church that she was different from Tanya. Perhaps Tanya wasn't strong enough, or her abilities were insufficient, so she hadn't come into contact with much of the Holy Ghost Church's duties and administration. However, with Ma Xiaodao's abilities and her cultivation rank, and with her frighteningly exalted status, I understand. Thank you, brother. Ma Xiaotao stood up straight and stared at Huo Yuao. Her eyes were actually entirely clear at this moment. Yuao, you're using ultimate eyes to help me suppress the riling emotions in my mind. But how are you able to suppress my evil aura from rising again? I don't know what the Holy Ghost Church has left behind in my body, but that thing has been integrated into my martial soul, the evil phoenix. Because of it, that thing has been affecting my emotions and my mental state. Huo Yuao lowered his voice and said, I'm using some special methods to absorb the energies of darkness inside your body, but I can feel that these energies are still rising continuously. As soon as I stop absorbing them, I'm afraid they will come back again. In your case, you have to completely fix your martial soul's problems so that you won't be affected anymore. Ma Xiaotao sounded despondent and defeated. Completely fix my martial soul's problems? That's a lot easier said than done. Not even Elder Mu had a solution back then. Huo Yuao felt a pain in his heart when she mentioned Elder Mu, but he didn't tell her that Elder Mu had passed away. Huo Yuao knew that it was best that he didn't stimulate her in any way. I have a solution, sister, I really do. I've been to a place, and I've obtained the poison chapter that Tang Clan, who was part of Shrek Academy's first generation of Shrek's 7 monsters. There is a record in there that describes how to resolve the problems with your evil phoenix. You have to ingest some immortal herbs, and you can dispel that evil aura within you. Furthermore, there are several immortal herbs that you can choose from. When we finish what we have to do here, I will accompany you to look for them. All right. Really? Ma Xiaotao's eyes lit up. Are you just saying that to make me happy? How can I crack jokes about something like this? Huo Yuao said seriously, your ancestor, Ma Hongzhen, who was the first to possess the evil phoenix, used the very same method to resolve his problems. Can you remember what happened before this? A complicated look and a dash of pain flashed across Ma Xiaotao's eyes. She nodded slightly and said, I can remember parts of what happened. I need some more time to regain my memory. Huo Yuao continued, sister, we are in Sunrise City, and this place is very dangerous. I'm staying in this inn next to us, and I'll be here for a while. Come and find me at midnight every day so that I can help you suppress the evil flames inside you. At least, I can help you control them so that they won't affect your emotions and your mental state. Judging by how fast those energies of darkness are recovering inside your body, they shouldn't affect you within a day. Huo Yuao stopped here, and his face suddenly changed. Not good. Someone else. It seems like they're from the Holy Ghost Church. Sister, you're not fully lucid yet. Can you manage? Ma Xiaotao's eyes froze for a moment, then she immediately nodded. I can manage. As long as I remain lucid, I can use my willpower to fight against that evil within me. Leave, quickly. I can deal with this. Take care, sister. Huo Yuao hugged her tightly before he jumped into the air and swiftly disappeared into the inn that he came from. Ma Xiaotao watched him leave. A forlorn look flickered across her eyes as she muttered, Yuao, my brother. Do you know that some things can't be forgiven and forgotten by lying to myself? Do you know that I've created mountains of corpses and oceans of blood while following them? She couldn't help but press her lips together tightly as she spoke. Ma Xiaotao looked up into the sky and forced back her tears as she clenched her fists tightly. The Holy Ghost Church. The Holy Ghost Church. Shadow after shadow quietly appeared not far behind her and stepped briskly in her direction. There were 6 people altogether, but when they realized that Ma Xiaotao was the one standing in the middle of the street, not a single one dared to come near. They knelt down on one knee as they muttered in unison, Greetings, Holy Lady. Hey! Ma Xiaotao suddenly turned around, and in that moment, dark red flames were dancing in her eyes once more. We've just received reports from the City Defense Army that there were chaotic soul power undulations around this area, so we came here to take a look. I'm not sure if you... Scram. Ma Xiaotao shouted coldly. Yes. All 6 evil soul masters didn't dare to probe any further, and they turned and slunk away. They had witnessed with their own eyes what their holy lady was capable of. Ma Xiaotao watched them disappear, and 2 rows of tears started streaming down her cheeks. Memories shocked her heart and soul like torrential tides, but she still had to take step after step into the distance. The window behind her that closed not too long ago was deeply imprinted at the bottom of her heart. My younger brother. No matter what, I will always have you, brother. A dash of despondence flickered beneath Ma Xiaotao's eyes as she rose into the air and flew into the darkness. Huo Yuao lay on his bed limply. As soon as he returned to his room, he managed to seal the blood vessels in his shoulder, but the pain that he felt was so intense that he had to grit his teeth as tightly as he could so that he wouldn't cry out in agony. Huo Yuao had started this day by using his spiritual avatar to scout and investigate, and he had ended it with his attempt at awakening Ma Xiaotao. Furthermore, he had had to sustain spiritual interference and imitation continuously while resisting Ma Xiaotao's ultimate fire and suffering the wound on his shoulder at the same time. It had taken all of his willpower to accomplish all that. The high-altitude surveillance cell tools had finally discovered something amiss in the end, because Huo Yuao had already reached the limit of what he could take, and his spiritual power was almost unable to sustain his soul skills. However, Huo Yuao had a smile on his face at this moment. He had succeeded. He had successfully awakened Ma Xiaotao. I've successfully awakened my sister. From the bottom of his heart, helping Ma Xiaotao to clear her head brought him more happiness than if he had saved every single hostage, because she was his family. Furthermore, with Ma Xiaotao as their inside man, they would have a far easier time saving those hostages. Spiritual weakness and bodily pain were nothing much for Huo Yuao's resilient willpower. He calmed himself down for a moment and waited to recover a little before he immediately activated his Eye of Destiny to amplify his spiritual power. He found Shu Sanchi, and he passed a message to him that he was all right. Afterwards, he sat down with his legs crossed and began to meditate. He wanted to return to the northern side of the city, but his body was in such a state that he really couldn't do that. Furthermore, he had awakened Ma Xiaotao, so he naturally wasn't afraid of his enemies coming back to search for him. Huo Yuao quickly displayed his formidable regenerative powers. The wound on his shoulder had completely scabbed over after 2 hours, while his spiritual power was recovering at lightning speed. There were 2 other people hard at work late into the same night. Ji Juogen was sitting in a small bar not far from the northern city gate. He was drinking by himself, and his handsome looks had attracted more than one girl, but whenever they came over to flirt with him, he had shaken his head each time. Ji Juogen's face had always been ice cold, but he would laugh foolishly from time to time, and his facial expression would occasionally become a little strange. Jing Xian was still feeling a little excited as she walked discreetly between shadows from wall to wall. She tossed rocks one after another into certain dark corners, and some even rolled near the city wall. Jing Xian's movement and actions were very covered and discreet, while she applied just enough strength from her wrists. She completed almost 1 round back and forth along the northern city wall within 2 hours. She looked up at the sky after she finished all that. It was now late into the night, but she didn't feel any fatigue or exhaustion at all. Instead, there was only satisfaction in her eyes. Jing Xian patted her hands and stepped out silently from the shadows, and quickly arrived at the bar Ji Juogen was drinking at. A cunning look flashed across her eyes, and the smile on her face immediately transformed into fury as she barged into the bar looking angry and indignant. Jing Xian gazed around inside the bar once she stepped in, and instantly locked her eyes onto where Ji Juogen was sitting. Very well, you drunkard. You don't come home this late into the night, and you come out to drink alcohol. Follow me home, right now. Jing Xian seemed just like a termagant as she dashed in Ji Juogen's direction. She pinched his ear viciously and immediately began to drag him out. Io, can you be gentler? Ji Juogen felt the pain from his ear as a thread of exasperation and helplessness flowed from his eyes, but there were also dashes of amusement and happiness. Gentler? What? If I find out that you've come out to drink one more time, I'll break your legs. Jing Xian was still pinching his ear as she dragged him out of the bar just like that. The bar's customers all looked on with widened eyes and slack jaws, and even the bartender, who was initially dozing off, now had a pitiful look in his eyes. No wonder he didn't dare to accept those girls' flirts. He actually has such a fierce wife. That's just pitiful. So pitiful. Jing Xian dragged Ji Juogen several dozen meters outside before the furious and ferocious look on her face gradually became one of amusement. Ji Juogen didn't struggle out of her pinch, and he forced a laugh as he asked, "Are you enjoying yourself?" Jing Xian giggled and said, "A little bit." Ji Juogen said, "Then you should pinch for a little while longer." Jing Xian was momentarily stunned. You. Ji Juogen heaved a faint sigh and said, "I've devoted my life to the sword before this, and I've overlooked far too much. I've overlooked things that I should be treasuring, especially you." Jing Xian was momentarily stunned. She subconsciously released her grip on his ear, and she planted her hands on her hips. "Are you saying that I've been very proactive, and I've always been trying to take advantage of you?" Ji Juogen shook his head as he smiled faintly and said, "I'm foolish and stupid." Jing Xian couldn't maintain her pose anymore, and her chin quivered gently as tears covered her eyes. "Why do you have to make me cry?" Ji Juogen pulled her into his embrace and said, "I will use our future days to compensate you. All right?" Jing Xian hammered his shoulder heavily and said, "Who needs your compensation?" Ji Juogen didn't answer her question. Instead, he hugged her tightly around the waist. "I don't know anything about words of love, Zian, and I can only tell you that I thought about this long and hard when I was drinking before this. You are more important than my sword. Ji Xian's body trembled when she heard his words. She suddenly looked up and stared at Ji Juoken with incredulous eyes. If another couple had the same conversation, comparing one's partner to an object would undoubtedly lead to conflict and resentment. However, these words were different when they came from Ji Juoken's mouth. Ji Juoken was a sword maniac, and his sword had been the only thing in his life over his entire 20 years alive. His sword was his everything. Ji Xian raised her trembling hands and clasped them around his face. Her voice quivered as she said, "You're the foolish one. No words of love can be more melodious than what you've just said to me. I love you, Juoken." She whimpered and sobbed, and tears were all over her lips as she pressed them against his. This time, her kiss wasn't passionate and intense anymore. Instead, her kiss was full of tenderness and warmth. Dawn arrived, and Huo Yuao had already awoken from his meditation when the first ray of sunlight peeked through the windowsill. There were two more people in his room long before he woke up, Shu Sanqi and Yu Guyi. They were both sitting in their own chairs with their legs crossed, and opened their eyes when they felt Huo Yuao awaken. "Seems like you've succeeded. How's your wound?" Shu Sanqi asked Yuao with a smile on his face, even though they were startled when they witnessed Huo Yuao's injury after they came back last night. The fact that he could return to this place and indicated many things. Huo Yuao nodded firmly and said with a delighted look, "I've managed to awaken her. She should come over tonight, so we have to start our preparations immediately." Huo Yuao washed up briefly and had some breakfast before he took out the water sample he had retrieved the previous day. "Third senior brother, can you help me separate the water elements inside? I studied that water prism very closely yesterday. Its position is quite low, while the moat's water outside should be running water, so it's always flowing. This means that if there isn't enough water inside the water prison, the moat will replenish it, while water won't flow backwards, and so the water won't change. There's something called soul eradicating powder inside the water prison, and I've retrieved some samples. We have to investigate and research it as quickly as possible, because providing antidotes for the hostages will be crucial to saving them. My spiritual avatar isn't afraid of the toxins in the water, and I can bring the antidote back to the hostages as long as we can find it." Shu Sanqi nodded and said, "That's not a problem. But the antidote." Huo Yuao nodded self-confidently and said, "I should be able to do it." He possessed his ancestor Tang Clan's poison chapter, and had studied it closely. If he could figure out that soul eradicating powder's composition, he had a chance to find an antidote with his recollection of the poison chapter's contents and his own understanding. If he failed, he would have to ask Ma Zhao for help when she arrived later on. Huo Yuao placed a glass bottle filled with toxic water on the table in front of him. Shu Sanqi pointed his right hand at the bottle, and gentle black soul power that resembled faint mist began to orbit it. The bottle started to quiver gently as threads of water vapor gradually seeped out, and Shu Sanqi's black fog currents carried all of it away. The bottle's liquid contents were conspicuously diminishing. Everything seemed so simple, but was separating elements like that truly easy and simple? Shu Sanqi controlled everything as if the entire process were a piece of cake. But even Huo Yuao, who possessed the ultimate ice, knew that he couldn't extract pure water elements like that while maintaining the liquid's initial toxin composition. Shu Sanqi himself wouldn't have been able to do this before his Swanwu Shield's true awakening. Ever since he had gained the Swanwu Shield, his ability to control and manipulate the element of water had reached an exceptional level. What he was doing at the moment was as easy as cutting a knife through butter for him. It didn't take long before only some gray liquid was left inside the glass bottle. There were some other impurities besides those toxins, but the toxins were a lot easier to distinguish after purifying the bottle's contents. Huo Yuao immediately retrieved some utensils and medicinal liquids and started experimenting on those toxins. Shu Sanqi and Yu Guyi accompanied him and guarded him, silently awaiting his results. Reality proved that Tang Clan's poison chapter was very reliable. Huo Yuao only took a little more than an hour to gain a rough idea of the soul eradicating powder's origin. The powder contained plant toxins, and it was formed from fusing the juice of 3 different venomous plants. It would be easier for Huo Yuao to find the antidote if he could reach accurate conclusions and judgments. So he used his spiritual avatar once more to retrieve some more samples, before patronizing some pharmacies outside and purchasing all sorts of medicinal items to experiment. The sun had gone behind the western mountain, and evening had arrived by the time Huo Yuao finally succeeded. "That's it. If we follow this proportion, we can neutralize the toxicity," Huo Yuao declared excitedly, wiping some sweat from his forehead. Spending his entire day researching and investigating poisons and toxins was a lot more exhausting than researching soul tools. After all, he was a lot less familiar with poisons than he was with soul tools. Huo Yuao swiftly jotted down the prescription he had devised from his experiments and passed it to Shu Sanqi and Yu Guyi as he said, "This prescription needs 5 different kinds of medicine, and I've written down the formula's proper proportions. Third senior brother, the two of you will immediately return to the north and call everyone to set off together to purchase those medicines. Everyone will buy 1 kind each, and everyone will process those medicines according to my directions. I will continue suppressing the power of darkness inside Xiaodao's body at night. The proportion of these 5 medicines cannot be wrong, because this antidote also has supplementary and strengthening effects, and I hope we can help the hostages recover their physical strength as quickly as possible." They finally had a proper direction for their rescue operation, and Shu Sanqi and Yu Guyi were also excited. Yu Guyi asked subconsciously, "Yuao, have you found Qikai's mother?" Huo Yuao was momentarily stunned. "I didn't notice when I went in before. There were many evil soul masters guarding and patrolling during that time, so I wasn't able to check every cage. But I think her mother should be all right. We will know when we bring everyone out." "Oh." Yu Guyi acknowledged as she turned to leave the room. Shu Sanqi stared at Huo Yuao with a deep look in his eyes before he followed her out. Shu Sanqi understood Huo Yuao a lot better than Yu Guyi did. He was acutely aware that with Huo Yuao's spiritual detection, how could he not scout everything inside the water prison, which couldn't be considered spacious? They had both met Nan Qikai's mother, Nan Shuishui, before, so searching for her shouldn't have been difficult at all. Huo Yuao's words meant that he didn't find a single trace of Nan Shuishui when he was inside, but he had to provide an ambiguous explanation so that Nan Qikai wouldn't spoil the entire operation because of her worry and anxiety. However, Shu Sanqi also remembered that Huo Yuao had promised her that if they couldn't save Nan Shuishui during their operation, he would stay behind with Nan Qikai. Huo Yuao was naturally clearer about these things. He heaved a sigh inside, and he prayed that nothing had happened to Nan Shuishui. It wouldn't be that difficult to find clues about whether Nan Shuishui was still alive. He just had to wait for Ma Xiaotao tonight and see if she could give him an answer. Shu Sanqi and Yu Guyi nervously went ahead to make the necessary preparations, while Huo Yuao wasted no time and began to cultivate. They were in a place filled with danger and peril, so maintaining himself at his peak condition was the optimal choice. At this moment, there were starfishes, which blocked surveillance soul tools, installed in every corner of the room he was staying in. He wasn't that far away from the southern city wall, but he was relatively safer. Huo Yuao had his dinner and waited for Ma Xiaotao inside his room. However, the night was gradually getting late, and Ma Xiaotao was nowhere to be seen. Huo Yuao was beginning to feel anxious. Even though Ma Xiaotao hadn't appeared, enemies didn't surround him to flush him out either, which meant that Ma Xiaotao hadn't completely lost her mind and her will. But why wasn't she here yet? Huo Yuao was becoming increasingly worried until his door quietly opened, and a shadow dashed inside in a flash and blew out all the lights in the room at the same time. Huo Yuao subconsciously drifted into the air and rapidly positioned himself in one corner on the opposite side. He activated his Eye of Destiny at almost the same time, and his spirit eyes burst with light in all directions. Sudden darkness was very disconcerting and disorienting for normal people, but Huo Yuao had his spirit eyes, so it wasn't that different to him. Huo Yuao immediately relaxed after he composed himself for a second. Wasn't that Ma Xiaotao who had just discreetly stepped into his room? "Sister Xiaotao," Huo Yuao hurriedly called out to her. Ma Xiaotao nodded in his direction before she briskly walked towards his bed, as if she was silently sensing something. Huo Yuao was a little surprised as he watched her. Ma Xiaotao's ultimate fire was incredibly powerful, and her spiritual power had become exceptionally strong as well, even though he hadn't deliberately scouted outside his room. The fact that Ma Xiaotao could come into his room without being discovered by the spiritual antennas that he had set up outside was quite impressive. Ma Xiaotao responded softly, "I was held back by something." "How do you feel, sister? Have the powers of darkness inside your body given you any backlash?" Huro Yuao asked her sincerely as he hurriedly walked over to her side. Ma Xiaodao shook her head and said, after you helped me dispel those powers of darkness last night, they have been stubbornly regenerating, but they will need at least 3 days to return to their initial levels. But as long as I control my own emotions and my state of mind, I should be able to hold off for roughly 7 days. That also means that as long as you treat me within 7 days, I will be able to maintain my mental clarity. Of course, the prerequisite is that I can't fight with my full strength. Otherwise, if I expend too much soul power, those powers of darkness will regenerate a lot faster as my soul power recovers. When that happens, I will really need you to treat me every day. Huro Yuao tilted his head and said, treating you every day is not a problem, because I'm not planning to separate from you. Anyway, I can help you suppress all that darkness. Sister, I almost have enough soul power now. Once I become a soul sage, and I have my martial soul true body, I might not even need medicines or anything to completely dispel the evil fire in your body. Ma Xiaotao glanced at him, and dash of rosiness appeared on her cheeks for no reason. Let's just stick with medicine. Just stick with medicines. Huro Yuao's vision was great, but he didn't notice the changes on Ma Xiaodao's face. He grasped her hands and began to release his aura of ultimate ice into Ma Xiaodao's body to guide her soul power. Ma Xiaodao had rested for the entire day, and she seemed to have completely restored her consciousness and state of mind. She worked together with Huro Yuao this time, and they had a far easier time dispelling and suppressing those powers of darkness inside her body. Towards the end, Huro Yuao could even be sure that as long as he stayed by her side and helped her suppress her powers of darkness every day, those problems within her body wouldn't bother her again. Of course, this would only treat her symptoms, and not the root cause of the problem. Ma Xiaodao allowed him to treat her in silence. She couldn't see as clearly as Huro Yuao could in the darkness of the night, but she was a powerful soul Douluo, so nighttime wasn't that much different from daytime for her. Ma Xiaodao stared at Huro Yuao, who had become a lot taller than her. He was still a little boy back then, but he had transformed into a handsome youth. Her eyes gradually became gentle and tender, but mournful looks flashed deep within from time to time. It was clear that her emotions weren't calm and settled at this moment. Oh, we're done. Sister, I've helped you suppress those powers of evil successfully, and today's results are better than yesterday's. Take a look. How do you feel? Ma Xiaodao nodded and said, I don't have to feel. There's no problem at all. You must be here to save all those hostages, right? Huro Yuao answered, yes. I'm not the only one here. Almost the entire Tang Sect is here this time. The Tang Sect? Oh, I remember now. They must be the people who participated in the big tournament not too long ago. Ma Xiaodao seemed to have recalled everything that had happened recently. Huro Yuao nodded and confirmed, yes. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.